Good morning. It's good to see everybody here today. It's a blessing to have you here. And if you're watching online, thanks for joining us this morning. And just a wonderful time. Hopefully you had a good time with family and friends over Thanksgiving. I know we did. We were down in Tennessee and had a really good time with family. And I tell you what, being with loved ones is a blessing, isn't it? It's nothing like it. I know a lot of people have been home alone for a long time. And it's difficult. It's difficult when we can't be around those people that we love, that we want to hug. And so when you can do that, enjoy those times. Enjoy those precious times. And hopefully we can all get together soon, like Mike mentioned. I had Donna Mann's funeral yesterday, and that was a really good service and with the immediate family. And so they just want to say thank you for all the support to all of you here. And so she passed away early Wednesday morning, and so we had the funeral yesterday. And I got a text message this morning from Kirk Weger saying that Clyde wasn't doing well. And so I went by his house early this morning and had a prayer with him. And so Clyde's been a blessing to our church for decades. And I told Kirk he's been a blessing and inspiration to people for generations, literally. And so we just remember those two families during these difficult times. God is with us always, isn't He? And, these times come to us all. But not all people are prepared for the end of times. And so that's why we come to church, to be encouraged, to be lifted up, and to remember that God is the head of all of us. And so I appreciate Dylan preaching last week, did a very fine job. And as he talked about being content is perfect. So please tell your lovely wife thank you for coming up with that topic. And so, because that goes great segue into what I'm going to talk about today. And so the idea of whose you are, okay, it's very important. You may think, I'm nobody's. I'm my own person. Well, little do you know. Well, we're going to talk about that this morning some. And so there's a picture of someone maybe thinking about it. Where am I in my life, and who am I, and whose am I, is a really good, deep question to ponder. And so as we've been looking at the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is bringing the sermon to a close here. We're in the last couple of lessons here for the Sermon on the Mount. And so Jesus didn't just talk about a bunch of things that just came on top of his head. All right? This is the best thinker that we've ever had, wisest person that's ever lived. And so he spoke in a very eloquently way and with an order, okay? And so as he's bringing his sermon to a close, we may need to think, what's Jesus' main point here? What's his thrust of his meaning that he's wanting to get to his audience? And knowing very well that this is going to be pinned on paper forever for people to read. And so he has this understanding. So we need to think about this purpose. I think it's great for us to take little bits at a time to get as much as we can out of it. And every time we look at it, we gain more things. But the overall idea is very important as well. So I want us to look at that. So a couple of verses I'm going to pick out of this so we can understand the flow. Of course, it begins with the great, blessed are those people, those that mourn, those that are poor, and that's a great way to begin it with. And then the first verse after that is Matthew 5:13 that says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by people." All right, so you have this verse right here. It kind of encapsulates this whole sermon here. It says, you are the salt of the earth, encouraging them that you are great and you can bless everybody around you. But if you have lost your saltiness, that's not good. What good are you? And so as we look at this, he is wanting people to get right with God, obviously, as he begins with blessings. And then he goes into how do you need to be? What's the kind of person you need to be? The characteristics you need to have. And then he talks about how you need to live. As he finishes up chapter 5 and gets in chapter 6, just the Christian lifestyle that he's trying to build in people. And then, even more so, the challenge to live for God. You know, to go against what the culture that you've built. You need to be serious in how serious you look at lust and lying and judging. You know, he looks at that so serious. And then finally, you know, not finally, but how to live here. How to live here in this earth. In a place that so many people are not chasing after my Father, God. How do you live among them? And then finally, the last two lessons I've given from the Sermon on the Mount has been about the gate and about fruit. And so, as Jesus is building this point, when he talks about the gate and fruit, remember the main points there? Which are you? Which gate are you going through? Which path are you on? Which fruit are you producing? Is it good or bad? Are you choosing the path towards eternal bliss and being with my Heavenly Father and with me as well? Or are you taking the path of the father of lies? So you see this Matthew 5:13 that he ends with, any salt that's lost its saltiness is to be thrown out and trampled by men. Although he started so encouraging. And the whole sermon is that way as well. As he started so encouraging and then giving good teaching about how to live, but at the end, if you're not with God, it's not going to end well with you. And he says this lovingly, of course, because that's a warning. The best time to warn somebody is before they make a mistake. Have you ever gone to visit someone after a car accident and you told them what they should have done to stay out of it? How well is that welcomed? Well, Captain Obvious, I appreciate that. Where were you a week ago to tell me this? So the best time to get a warning and good advice and sage sayings is before you need it. Because once you hear it afterwards, it doesn't help you. So Jesus has been encouraging them, challenging them, and here warning them that if you do not live for me towards God, it's not going to end well for you. And so that's the thrust I want to talk about today in the passage that Mike read for us. I want us to think about this and think about it soberly because I think the Christian world today doesn't like talking about this topic and the topic that we're going to discuss next. It just doesn't like to go there because most of the Christian world now today talks about joy, love, and we're going to heaven. And doesn't talk about the other aspect, about the people that don't have joy, that don't have Jesus, that those that won't go to heaven. All right? And so let's look at this passage again, Matthew 7:21 through 23. Not everyone says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the ones who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles. And then I would declare to them, I never knew you. Leave me, you who practice lawlessness. Okay? How often do you hear that in a sermon towards the end? Okay? This isn't the warm, fuzzy feeling that you would think that you would hear at the end of a sermon to encourage people. Once again, Jesus is warning them. He is warning them about what may come. And so this idea of, are you content? Okay, but what are you content in? Jesus is warning, don't trust in yourself, but in me. Because I think a lot of people, as we're in a Facebook culture, people want to protrude or show a life of happiness, a life of peace, that everything's going great, right? That's what people want the image that they want you to see, that everything's going great. Well, inside, it may be going awful. So this idea of content, the definition being a state of peaceful happiness. How many people have that? How many people think they have it? How many people think they know how to get it? And that's the trick right there. A lot of people think they know what they need to do to get it. They just haven't got what they're chasing after yet. Whether it's a house being paid off, that special someone, or a certain experience. All right? And so this is something that we need to look into. And so Matthew records here what Jesus said in the middle of the sermon in 6:1. Take care not to practice your righteousness in the sight of people to be noticed by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. So Jesus hits on this again here towards the end of his sermon in the passage that we read. Because that idea in 6:1 is like, okay, if you did it for men, then you got your reward. You got your pat on the back, attaboy, you did such a good job. If that's the reward you're looking for, then you're going after pennies when you need to be going after dollars. Because the reward that we need to be looking to get is from God, from Jesus. But so many men and women go after the award that we get from people. Did you see what I did? Did you see this or that? So Jesus didn't challenge their work, but their heart. Well, this is so interesting to me, because in the example that Jesus gave, people are going to say, we prophesied, we cast out demons, we did all these miracles. And Jesus didn't say here, no, you did not. Right? Apparently they did. They did such amazing things. They prophesied. They cast out demons, and they did miracles. But what did Jesus say? I've never known you. I've never known you. So look at that picture there. That guy. Oh, look, he's helping someone. Isn't that nice? He's giving some food to this guy, or maybe some coins. But look, he's also taking a selfie of him doing it, so he can put it on Facebook and for other people to see. Now, I think it's great to help people. But to me, it's a pet peeve of mine, and since I'm the preacher, I can share with my pet peeves, that people share what they do for God so much. Now, I think it's okay. We have to share some so people have the idea and see the good that needs to be done, right? I completely understand that. Personally, I like sharing more of what other people have done than what I'm doing. Because then I just feel like I'm bragging on myself. Have you ever felt that idea? It's like, oh, listen to me. Or have you ever heard of someone who likes to one-up other people? Someone says, oh, you know what? I ran 3 miles yesterday. Not bad. I ran 3 miles to warm up. And they just go on and on. And so we have to be careful that what we do, we actually do it for God and not for the praise of other people. And so when we take our selfies and we put things on Facebook, I just want to warn you to make sure that you're not doing it for the praise of other people, for the likes at the bottom. When you see a picture that you put there, don't be encouraged or discouraged by how many people liked it. Because honestly, the only like that matters is whether God likes it. That's the one that we need to be going after, okay? And if that means you need to take breaks away from Facebook and other social media, I know there's a lot out there, then do it. You need to do things like this in order to save yourself so you don't get so enwrapped in it that you define your self-worth by other people's actions. The only actions that really define our self-worth is the actions of Jesus Christ. And that's what we need to be tied into. And so Jesus says here, people are going to call me Lord. The word he uses is that curios, and he says it twice there for the emphasis. And so what that word means is not just Lord, but master and my owner. It's like a slave-master mentality. So a lot of people are going to say, Master, my owner, I am yours. And so that's why Jesus' response is so penetrating. He's like, I never knew you, meaning I don't own you. Because did you know this? If a slave did something that broke the law back then or did some kind of bad crime, who is responsible? The owner. The owner. Have you ever taken a young child into a place with breakables and you were a little worried? because you were thinking that maybe I'm buying things I didn't intend to buy. Because what your little blessing breaks, you buy. It's not just one vase, it's 1,200 little pieces of a vase, right? And so likewise, you want to be owned by someone who is strong and that can protect you and take care of you, okay? And so when they look, day of judgment, Jesus, I want Jesus to own me now because he's going to heaven and taking people to heaven. And Jesus saying, I never knew you. Not only do I not own you, but I never knew you. Pretty strong. Remember, he's saying this to people that did a lot of things in the name of Jesus. So, if we bring this to 2020, could there be a lot of people that say they're doing things for Jesus that are not doing for Jesus? Well, if it was true back then, I imagine it's true today. You have to see, of course, we can't judge a man's heart. You know, we look at the outside, God judges the heart, and it's up to him. He's going to be the one that decides who's with him, who's not us. I tell people I don't send people to heaven, I don't send people to hell. Either way. All right? But we need to be sober when we think about ourselves. So don't be content in wrongdoing. These people that were doing good things but with wrong motives, do you think they had this content, this state of peaceful happiness? I think so. They might have even been cocky and arrogant with where they were. Have you ever met someone that you knew that is doing bad things and not in a good relationship with God, but they seem to be content in their state of life? We see it all the time, don't we? People that have been calloused over and they don't feel the good leading of God anymore, and so even in the wrongdoing, they're content. So contentment is good if you're with God. Contentment without God is very dangerous. Because I think there's a lot of people that have lost their way. God's given them over to a deranged mind and spiritual leaning. And so they need to understand that it's not enough to be content, but as long as you're with Jesus and you're content, that's what's so important. And so, whose you are? Which all of us are owned. Did you know that? All of us have a bill of sale. But who owns you is the question. And that's something we need to think about. So this deception is so key. This deception is so bad because we deceive ourselves. And it's the worst deception. It's one thing if someone tricks you, it's like, oh, you got me, you may even be angry about it. But it's worse when we deceive ourselves. And this verse that comes to my mind, Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. So the idea of pride comes before a fall, somebody's so cocky, I'm okay, everything's fine. That just creates the fall to be even bigger, doesn't it? Even harder. It's like someone who doing something kind of dangerous and doesn't use any equipment for safety. I'm okay, so prideful. You don't see any NFL players going out there with no helmet, shoulder pads, and anything. It's like, I'm just fine. No problems here. Well, he would leave on a stretcher if he tried to play like that. Because everybody else has that protection. And so we need to be careful that our pride doesn't get us in trouble. And I worry that so many people, in their pride, they think that they're perfectly fine with God. Because of who they are. Because they're so precious. Which everybody is precious, but it doesn't depend on what you've done, whether you're right with God or not. It depends on whether you've connected yourself on what Jesus has done. So don't deceive yourself. This is a good thought. You have to say this in a gentle, loving way that it can be received by someone. Because if you take a medicine that your body doesn't accept, then it's not doing you any good, right? You have to take medicine in a certain way that your body can absorb it and process it. Likewise, wisdom from God. You need to give wisdom to people in a way that they can accept it and absorb it, that makes it profitable for them. And so you need to be able to be blessed, to have your words be with salt so that they can receive it. But I think a lot of Christians, or a lot of people that think that they're Christians, deceive themselves. And have you ever thought how people view people that go to church who don't go to church? Well, I was thinking about how to find a picture like this, because it's kind of strange. Nowadays, people who go to church are kind of seen as kind of hypocrites. Have you heard that? Or goody two-shoes, or you think you're better than we are. And I think this is how people see people that go to church sometimes. Oh, and that wolf is just putting on his Sunday clothes. Putting on his clothes to look like a sheep. And then after church, he's going to take that off and try to rob me blind in whatever business he's in. He's only different from me for those 2 hours on Sunday morning that he goes to church. And the rest of the time, he's worse than me because he's pretending. Now, how did people get this mindset of people that go to church? Because unfortunately, there's a lot of people like this. There's a lot of wolves that put on the Sunday clothes of sheep on Sundays, but then they go out through the week and you couldn't tell they were any different than all the other wolves. Jesus calls us to be different. It's these people that Jesus says, I never knew you. Actually, you embarrass me when you say that you're connected to me. If we could see more of the sermon there, if Jesus spoke more about it, he probably would say these things. Says, you actually anger me that you say you're doing things in my name, but look what you asked in payment for what you did with that. When you helped that person, when you cured that person, did you ask for payment? Give me gold, give me clothes, give me things. Then you have nothing with me. That's so serious. So that's why the payment that we receive needs to be from Jesus and from God. So the trick isn't being content, but being content in Jesus. Right? Is Jesus enough for you? I had a conversation with someone not long ago and talking about worship and things. Nobody at this church, so don't think I'm talking about you. And talking about worship is like, but this kind of thing is just so much more pleasurable. It's so much more enjoying. I was like, well, there's a case to be made for that. We don't try to put out something that's unenjoyable, for sure. But that can't be the thing that runs the show, makes decision every day, every time. What's enjoyable? Because sometimes what's enjoyable is a sin, right? And so at some point we have to think what's pleasing to God. What helps us to get closer to God. Now, that conversation was just about worship, but that is applicable to a lot of decisions that we make in church, in our individual lives, in our family. What's more pleasurable? For the whole family to go to Hawaii. Can you afford that? No. Let's go anyways. Well, that week of pleasure, you're going to be paying for a really long time. You need to think about it. And so the trick isn't being content, but being content in Jesus. Is Jesus enough that you say, yes, I've gotten everything I need? I hope so, with Jesus. And so many non-Christians are content, but they're not content with Jesus. They're content in their lawlessness. They're content in their sin. And sadly, many Christians are not content. Many Christians yes, they've got Jesus, but they want more. They want special stuff. What other amenities come in being Christian? Can I get more? So if you are a Christian and not content, then there's an issue there. Because Jesus needs to be enough for you. We are so affluent. Even our poor are affluent and comparable to a lot of countries. And so, are you content with what you get from Jesus? I hope so. And so whose you are is so important. because that's where you're going to derive your peace, your joy, and your happiness. So my Lord is who? You need to think about that. So at the end here, once again, Matthew 7:23, and then will I declare to them, I never knew you, depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Even though they said they were doing a lot of things for Jesus. Now, Jesus doesn't have to condemn people that don't call on his name, because it's obviously their condemnation. What Jesus is calling out, he did this with the Jewish leaders. In a way, he's talking about people in the future. He's talking about Christians here. It's one of those few times that he's judging on Christians, because he's talking about future people that said, didn't we call you Lord, Lord? And that could be us. Jesus says he never knew them. And so this is different than people that have fallen away and need to be come back to me. You know, we can parse this in a lot of different ways. So some people come to Christianity or pretend to for all selfish reasons. You know, we can all think of examples of this. And people bring verses out of context, sadly, and say, if you believe in Jesus, then you'll be with him in heaven. Right? There's multiple verses that just talks about belief. But when you start bringing up, oh, let's talk about what belief means. Nope, I've already defined it, what it is to me. I don't need to hear it anymore. And they think it's just that Jesus, they know the existence of Jesus is enough. And they want all the good things that comes with having a good, healthy spiritual life with Jesus. Comes with that. And it's not. You have to live for Jesus. Live for Jesus. Not just live knowing that Jesus exists. And so this is fearful. As Jesus is finishing his sermon with this, don't you think a lot of people that want to follow him were thinking, wow, this is serious stuff. I could be thinking that I'm doing everything right, but what if I'm not? So Jesus wants us to have peace in knowing that if you're saved, for sure, be at peace with that, but don't fool yourself to think that you can fool Jesus and God. I'll trick Jesus and God. I'll come to him on my last day. Now, unfortunately, I have to do a lot of sermons. I'm a lot of funerals. Some funerals are easier than others. Okay? Funeral for Donna yesterday. Some funerals that I'll have in the future are very easy to do, because I know that I'm going to see these people later. I'll see you soon, but hopefully not today. Other people, I've done a funeral that people came to me and says, I don't know how you're going to do this. We know he's in hell. I had family member tell me that. I'm like, well, I don't know either now. That's much harder, isn't it? Now, how many of those people thought that they were okay with God? Imagine everybody thinks that if there's a God, they're okay with them because of their circumstances. I'm sure God understands. The main person that we need to make sure that we please is God and Jesus. I can't say that enough. Otherwise, it's going to be like this. This guy trying to meet this girl. Hello, hey! It's a picture of me in college trying to get a date. No. And I'm afraid this is how people are going to be with Jesus. It's like, Jesus, don't you know me? And Jesus is like, I never knew you. And that is a huge tragedy. When people think that they're right with God or Jesus, and they're truly not. All right? So, are you your own man? Are you your own woman? You know, none of us like being told what to do. Romans 6, 17, 18, I alluded to this, but thanks be to God that you who were once slaves of sin have become obedient from the heart to the standard of teaching to which you were committed. And having been set free from sin, have become slaves of righteousness. So the concept of whether you're a slave or not is solved here. You're for sure a slave. The only question is, whose slave are you? Are you a slave to the devil and yourself? Or are you a slave to Jesus? For me, I hope on that day when I call him Lord, master, he'll say, yes, he is my slave. He's been working for me. Things I've given him, the will of the Father, like he said. If I've been doing the will of the Father, then I'm a good slave, and he'll take me home. Or he'll say, I never knew you. Even though you said things in my name, you did it selfishly, you did it for your own gain, you did it for your own pride. I never knew you. You disgust me. It's one of the two. The two people Jesus is talking about in Matthew 7:21-23 are Christians, or Jewish people that decided to follow him, okay? It's people that call themselves Christians. He's not talking about the people that haven't followed Jesus. He's talking about people who say that they're Christians. And so the decision is, if we're doing the will of the Father, or trying to trick Jesus, say, hey, I'm a wolf in sheep's clothing. People think I'm doing everything right as a sheep, but inwardly, I'm really a wolf. And that's sad. So this is the image that I hope we can have one day, when we can reach out to Jesus, and he can lift us up. It's like, yeah, I've known you for a long time, and I know you know me. You know, it's interesting as people pass. Been there with people as they've passed, and talked with people, of course, a lot. And something that's interesting, and this was true with my dad as well, and my mom as well, thinking about it, that sometime during those last moments, hours or days, lift up. They lift a hand up. Have you ever been with someone or talked to someone, they experienced that? And I'm just thinking that Jesus is there in maybe a situation like this. Now, you know, I went to go see Clyde this morning, and of course Donna, saw her a couple times before I went down to Tennessee, and they told me Donna was doing that, lifting her hand up. And Kirk told me that his dad, Clyde, has been doing that recently. And I think he said he did it yesterday, and he was just singing. He kind of woke up and started singing In the Garden Alone, and was lifting his hand up. There is going to be reality for every person one day when it comes to your time. There's no hiding it. There's nobody that you can fool. Or if you fool the whole world, who cares? Because you're never going to fool God or Jesus. Either Jesus is going to say, I never knew you, or welcome home, my slave. And that's a proud thing to be, is to be the slave of Jesus Christ. And so, who do you serve? Now the thing is, a lot of people think that we serve each other. In a way we do, but everything I do for you guys, in my heart, in my mind, I do it for the Lord. And I hope you do it as well. And that's why I try to say so often, praise be to God, praise God, because I don't want to get my ego lifted much. I don't want to fool myself. I don't want to deceive myself. That's a fear of mine, to be honest, that I think I'm getting some kind of gain personally for what I do for in His name. So be careful that everything that we do, make sure that you do it for Jesus. And once again, I'd rather give you a warning before the accident than at your funeral, right? And so this is time to hear it. For us Christians, let us be sober, let us be wise in the way we live our life, so we know whose we are, and that is Jesus Christ. Of course, a big step in this is getting baptized. There's nothing special about this water. I don't get shipped in from Jerusalem or anything, but this water is that great symbolism of us dying to ourselves and being born again. Bradley so well made that decision just a few weeks ago and became a Christian. One of the biggest Christian boys I've seen born. And so I tell you what, all of us need this. If you're at home and if you need Jesus, if you know someone needs Jesus, we can bring you here. We can get you baptized with nobody else here. So we want you to be at peace about that. But everybody needs Jesus. And so I want you to be content with Jesus, not in your sin. Please come forward as we sing this song.